And we're back. Hi, I'm Susanna Sagat, and this is part 2 of today's edition of Cambridge Inside Out, the sequel. And I have with me my co-host.
This week's guest, Robert Winters. So, I might stick around.
I hope so, because otherwise we're both leaving together.
There we go.
So this is a call-in show. So that means you need to participate and call us. Do we have a number? 617-876-0055.
That's right.
Come on, you can call us.
We're happy to talk to you.
We'd love to talk to
But
you.
in the meantime,
Can I just make one quick neighborhood comment?
please do.
This weekend was important not only because we went to see the final count, but a couple of important neighborhood restaurants closed this weekend. We had Upstairs on the Square closed down, and we had Chez Henri over on Mass Ave closed down. So those are two long-term restaurants that have shut their doors.
I did hear about that.
So it's a sad thing when long-term restaurants shut their doors.
It's true, but as long as Brookline Lunch is still around, I'm okay.
Okay. So sometime we'll be talking about neighborhood things.
That's right.
And maybe we'll have some interesting restaurateurs come in and talk to us. Maybe bring us food. What do you think?
Yeah, I like that.
But since this election is still not official, we're still talking about that.
A little bit more.
Just a little bit more. But you can call in and talk to us.
Yeah.
So what do you want to talk about?
Well,
My special guest.
I want to do a little speculation, if I may.
I like speculating.
You know, one of the things that occasionally happens, perhaps not super frequently, but it does sometimes happen that one of the elected representatives, one of the people on the city council, might decide to run for another office.
Hey, wait, they're not even sitting down yet and you're already getting rid of them?
You know,
All right, good going, Robert.
you can't let the grass grow under your feet here.
So
right?
who's leaving?
I don't know that anybody's leaving, but you know, it's
Who's going to be mayor?
and there's another little source of great speculation. Actually, let me say about the mayor first.
All right.
We're going totally.
You know?
Yes, I do. No, of course I don't. But you know, you could actually see when we were even doing the preliminary results, you can see certain city councilors sort of chatting up other ones. There's all
As
these.
they should.
They're like having little dating going on around the room. You know, people, and you know, as Anthony Galuccio was saying, it's like the hard sell isn't really the best way. He says the soft sell. You see a lot of like, hey, how are you? How you doing? Yeah, you know, and so that's happening now, and it's going to continue to happen. I'm sure some people will claim that they're violating some open meeting law or some other silliness, but they're not. They're just chatting each other up. One thing that's interesting now is that because, unless the recount changes things, there will be 4 new faces, and I think we can fairly say that none of the new people are going to be mayor. Would you say that that's a...
I think that's a good observation. It's
Yeah,
very possible.
I think we're going to go with that.
Wouldn't it be weird if they were?
That would be something. That would be something.
Okay, so what are you thinking?
So what it means is that, unlike 2 years ago, where I jokingly referred to it, the mayoral contest as the 9 mayor problem.
Oh, now it's not 9.
That's right. You know, it wasn't really 9, but it was like 8 or 9 people, all of whom had expressed
who could do it?
Yeah, they all expressed some interest in being mayor, and so you had a deadlock where one person had 2 votes, the other one had 1 vote, 1 vote, 1 vote. You know, it was kind of going nowhere fast. This year's a little bit different, and there's at least a chance that this could get resolved more quickly, because there's now arguably just 5 candidates potentially for mayor. You know, and I don't know if Craig Kelly has expressed any interest in it or anything.
He has not talked to me about it.
That's right. Really? No. Right. But so I don't know if Craig's interested in it. But then that would, if he isn't, then that would reduce it a little bit further. There's always speculation. Well, is it Tim Toomey's turn to become mayor? And I think there's at least some expectation that if he, to be a city councilor, a state rep, and mayor, it's probably a little over the top, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the speculation would be if Tim really, really wanted to put his hat in for mayor, he'd probably have to commit to giving up a state rep seat. So, which would then cause even more special elections,
wow.
and we really love our
Okay,
special
who else
election.
is there?
Okay, so
We don't want to talk about a special
so
election
it could be David Marr, could be Denise Simmons, could be Tim Toomey, could be Craig Kelly potentially, and I'm
Exactly.
embarrassed to admit I'm forgetting who the other one is. Yeah. I said, Marr, wait,
Oh my God.
Well, anyway.
We're really
it's-
sorry.
Oh,
We
of
don't
course,
mean
Leland.
it.
Leland.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness,
That's why.
And Leland was driving hard for the hoop last time, He really wanted it, so I assume he wants it again. So you've got 5 people who are possibilities for mayor, but, there's a lot of psychology that goes on in here. But anyway, with only 5 candidates, it's a little easier to resolve. So I imagine
That means it's a lot of pressure on the newbies.
well, it also may mean that, some clever incumbent is probably working the newbies, saying
It's
if I can
hard.
get
That's
these
a lot
4
of
to all
pressure.
put all their chips on me, then 4 + 1 is 5. Yippee, I'm mayor, right? It could be
I
that's.
don't envy them this.
I'm sure there's some of that going on, and there may be some of the new councilors who are already sort of saying, well, let's form a little coalition and we can work together to try and have as much influence on who gets to be mayor. I'm sure all of this is happening here right now. But anyway, that'll get resolved probably, I'm going to
In the
guess.
next 7 months.
Sometime in the next 7 months. I'm guessing it probably won't take as long as it did last time. But you
Now,
never
I
know.
know that, who was it? Maybe it was Marjorie Decker who wanted to put in a motion that said that business would continue regardless of whether the mayor had been appointed or not, or
Well,
elected. Did
she-
that actually happen?
I think she did put in something like that, but
Did it pass?
But you got to understand is that there's absolutely no reason why business has to stop.
But it does.
Well, it stops only because they want it to stop. I
Right.
think.
Well, because it adds pressure to the
Well,
thing.
people say, well, until there's a mayor, we haven't appointed any committees. Well, let me tell you, folks, the committees weren't really doing much this time. And the other thing is the ordinance committee and the finance committee, which are the real sort of top dogs in this game, those are committees of the whole. So in fact, all it takes
So
is
they could do business if they wanted
Yeah,
to. But
all-
that would take the
I think
pressure
it's
off.
some rule that, all you need takes is a majority of the councilors to say, let's meet as the finance committee, and then they would. They could just, roll some dice to see who's gonna be the chair for that meeting. It doesn't matter, you don't really need a chair. So they could conduct business without a mayor, no problem. I think it kind of makes people just to feel a little more settled if they do it, so everybody hopes that they do it. But the notion that somehow the business of the city stops cold because the mayor's not in, has not yet been chosen, that's just false. I mean, I think the people over in the school committee, they're a little eager to kind of know who's they're gonna deal
I don't
with.
think so.
You know? But they've already voted who their vice chair is,
Yeah,
and that's
they're
the person,
set.
so they've already appointed their committees,
Yeah.
even with just an interim mayor.
Yeah.
And by the way, the interim mayor, if there is an interim mayor this time, this chair of the school committee would be Tim Toomey.
Oh, you're
Because
kidding.
he's the
the
senior member
dean?
now, because Ken Reeves will no longer be on the
Wow,
council
that'll
come
be a
January.
change.
Yeah, so that's something that one could anticipate. So, Tim might say, go ahead, don't decide. I think maybe I'm kind of liking being sort of
Oh,
a
that's a big
temporary
change.
mayor. So that's a possibility. Now, as we started to say on the beginning of the show here, was that another possibility that could happen, and again, I'm not in any way trying to suggest it will, but, it has happened. I think it was was it in the 2000 and after the 2005 election, David Marr, was first elected to the city council, I think in 99 or 2001, I forget. He was actually defeated in the 2005 election. However, during that term, actually toward the end of the term, but Michael Sullivan exited to become full-time
During his term. he
during
left.
his term, so he vacated the seat. During that term, I think it was in 2007 when he vacated the seat. And then the way we do things in Cambridge is we determine the replacement in a vacancy by taking the quota of ballots that were assigned to elect that person. And those are the ballots, they just run through a mini count to determine one winner from that quota of ballots. And those ballots chose David Marr.
So they don't add those ballots to their own ballots? They
Nope.
just counted only those ballots?
Just it's like a fresh election,
Does
that's
that
right.
make sense?
There are some questions about vacancy refill, quite a few. I mean, I'll say a quick word about that, but no, it's determined because you're really trying to
Because
find.
you're replacing that person.
Yeah, it's like the theory is you want to get a person who's as much like the person who's
I
leaving
see.
as possible, because after all, that person
just the
represents some constituency, and that constituency wants to continue to be represented.
Okay, that makes
See,
sense.
so as a first approximation, just using that quota of ballots makes a lot of sense. There are some subtleties about this which could be problematic, but that's how it's done. So when Mike Sullivan left, David Marr
Got his ballots.
got the seat.
The majority of the ballots for him.
That's right. And once he was
Is it just majority?
it may just run through all the counts. So any of the candidates that had been who were defeated are now and who are still around, still living here and still alive, would be in the running. And then,
Yeah.
but the thing is, it's usually one or two very dominant candidates,
Yeah.
and they just quickly run through here, like a series of runoffs until you elect down
Just
to the
go down
last
to
two, and then who's ever ahead wins. Usually, that's the person who got the most votes in the initial distribution, but
Okay.
it doesn't have to be. So in 2005, by 2007, David Marr had picked up his seat again, and then in the subsequent election that fall, I think a lot of sympathy for, David had lost his seat in 2005, so people were really loyal. That tends to be what happens. So if somebody comes in on the vacancy refill who had been bounced out, there's a good chance that they're actually
Yeah.
going to galvanize their previous
Right,
supporters.
because those people don't play with their votes.
Then under that
They're taking
circumstance,
it
if they
seriously.
did play the previous one and he lost, then they said, well, we're not going to do that again. So the similar thing happened after the 2007 election. Brian Murphy had been elected, and then he vacated his seat in early 2009, and that's when Larry Ward,
Got his votes.
he wasn't winning his seat back. He was just one of the challengers, but he was the one who actually was elected on Brian's ballots. All right, and Larry ran in the subsequent election, 2009, didn't win, but did well, but just didn't win. Similarly happened back in 1993 when Billy Walsh left and vacated his seat, and that's when Anthony Galuccio first was elevated to the city council. So vacancies do happen, maybe not so frequently. It was 93, 2005, 2007. But, there's always a chance. I mean, there's always been some speculation of the five. I know Denise Simmons was running for a state Senate seat a few years ago. I don't know if she has any thoughts about doing something like that again. I don't think Tim Toomey's going to leave to become something else, because he already is something else. He's a state rep as well. So really, though, the two possible players who might look at another seat actually coincidentally happen to live in the same state rep and Senate district. So I guess if one were to look, they'd be running for the same seat. That's Leland Chung and Craig Kelly. Right?
Now, we're making all this up. This is not happening.
This is
This
pure
is pure
speculation.
speculation.
But I suspect, because if you look at the way Leland is easy to see, because, his number one ballots are being, a quarter of his ballots are being spread around to other candidates.
Yep.
And from that, you can easily see who would probably be the potential winners. And I would imagine,
Well, we will. You can see them, yeah, can you?
can't see it yet, but one of these days I'll get ballot data and then I'll just run it and I'll tell
we
the
would
world.
know.
I'll tell, scream
And
it
then
from the
that
mountaintop.
person can convince Leland to run for something else.
Something that is, like, for example, if Leland would decide he wanted to run for president well, maybe not president, governor,
That person would encourage him.
right? So exactly. And then,
That's smart.
if Leland vacated the seat, then Minka would pick up her seat again. See? So
If it were Minka.
I think it would probably Minka, but I don't know that until I look at the ballot data and run
What about
run the
Craig?
election. I would imagine if it was Craig, chances are, if he were to run for another seat and get elected, and
Well, then
choose,
quit.
and he could do what Tim does and what Marjorie was doing, which was just hold the two seats simultaneously. But, if he decided to run for Pat Jalen's seat or something like that, then what would happen is his replacement would be, or else maybe he got a great job
So
in
Senator
Washington, D.C.
Jalen, if you're watching, please call us and tell us you're not quitting.
That's right, exactly. But listen, there have been years back, I think in the Kennedy administration, when one of our sitting city councilors took a job in Washington as an advisor
Oh,
to the
sure.
president. And, if the president asks you to do it, you do it.
Absolutely.
So, there are other reasons why people could vacate the seat for very good reasons. So it's not out of the question. But I imagine if it was Craig,
And if the president asked one of the people that hadn't won, they would go too.
they would go too. Absolutely. Right. But I would imagine if it was Craig vacating the seat, then either Sam Seidel or Minka would be the one who would pick up that seat. But I don't know. Till you actually run it, you can't tell. But one of these days,
I'm not giving up on Denise either. You never know.
Well, that's a possibility too, and that's a little harder to predict. Oh, no, actually, it's very easy to predict. If she would have vacated the seat, then Ken Reeves would pick up the seat again. I'm certain of it. So,
Wow.
some people are very unhappy because Ken is no longer going to be on the council. But if a seat was vacated, he could be back.
This is all made up.
It's not out of the question. It's not out of the realm of possibility. So, anyways, that's something I thought people should
I
at
like
least be
that.
aware of. Yeah. So, anyway, and as I say, and I was also going to say, just not that I want to obsess any further on the recounts, but we have had recounts before in the city council. Since the planning charter, I'm sure maybe there were recounts before, but 1945, when Mr. Drinkwater sought a recount. Which I wouldn't blame him because he was actually number 5 and number 1 votes that year, and he lost the election.
That's painful.
So he said, "This cannot be."
It's painful.
So he asked for recount and didn't help. And then in 1969 and in 1971, Lenny Russell lost by a relatively narrow margin on the city council race, and there were recounts in those both in successive municipal elections.
What happened in the recount?
No change. There has never been a change yet during the planning era.
Okay.
And so those were the 3 city council ones. So now it's actually been a 42-year gap, believe it or not, from 1971 to now. So until the next recount, apparently, for a city council seat.
So this is good. This is the first time a woman has asked for a recount in a city council election.
No. Oh, in a city
No.
council election.
Yeah.
I believe I know of
City
one.
council
I know of a
election.
woman who
I know
asked
there's
for
a-
one in a school committee
I was the
election.
first one there too.
Yes,
So
you
Minka
were.
and I, we made history.
That's
Good
right.
job.
You made history. That's right. On the school committee, there were recounts in 1961. I believe a fellow named Adams. I don't actually know who he was. 1963, it was Anthony Galuccio's dad.
Wow, did he win?
No, he had lost, and he asked to recount, and he didn't win in the recount either.
So none of it mattered. None of it helped.
Well, the margins changed. The interesting one to me was 1989, which was not an eternity ago.
What happened there?
That was the one where David Marr had lost by 34 votes to Jim Rafferty, and in the recount, it narrowed to 11 votes.
But Rafferty still won.
Yeah, and I think in the subsequent election in 91, David's theme was, "We're going to work 11 times harder."
Oh, I like that.
And he walked right in, no problem then. And then it was 2001. Yay! Yes, the school committee election. And then 2009 with Joe Grassi. So it's not unprecedented. So it may just happen here. So I think we've talked out ourselves on elections, don't you think?
Well, there's a pattern there. And for the city council, it's male, 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 female, and for school committees, male,
Susanna.
male, male, female.
Susanna, I'll do the math. Thank you.
There's a pattern there.
Okay. All right. So I want to talk about something completely different.
I hope so.
All right. And this is really triggered by something that was said at the city council meeting this last night, actually.
There was a city council meeting last night? We still have people in there?
It's really true. Business continues. I know this is a stunning reality.
Oh, my goodness.
But life goes on. And actually I think it was the first time they all got together after the election. So there was a lot of little private conversations
Yeah,
and
that's a good thing.
consoling and going on. And, it's a very good thing. But one thing that was said, and I don't know enough of the details, but I'm going to speak about it anyway, was that Mayor Davis was saying how I think it's coming Monday, I hope it's this coming Monday, that she was going to be having something, I think, from noon to 5 in the mayor's office, kind of celebrating volunteerism or volunteers, Cambridge volunteers.
Are you inviting people to this?
Well, she actually asked people, so I want to get the details down. So this is sort of like a kind of a temporary highlight here. But
So go, but just don't tell them we
I
sent
mean,
you.
I don't think it's being promoted as well as it should be here, but it's something that it's not the first time something like this would have happened. I think when David Marr was mayor, there was an event held up in Harvard Square somewhere where all the members of the various city boards and commissions were invited because
Oh, so just boards and commissions, not just
well,
anyone
no,
who
this
volunteers.
is broader. This includes, it's actually Lori Lander was the one who was promoting this. So this is not just initially about boards and commissions, but the mayor did mention something about including boards and commissions members who serve as volunteers for this. And I thought, that's an interesting part of the civic landscape that nobody talks about enough. There's this enormous, really enormous number of people who serve on various for no pay whatsoever. I think the only board members that actually get a stipend is the election commissioners, but everything else
Well, they get a salary.
They get a salary, right? But everyone else who serves on boards and commissions, from the Affirmative Action Advisory, do it alphabetically, the Affirmative Action Advisory Committee, all the way down to the the retirement board. There are some people who are city staff who are of necessity have to be on some of these committees, but for the most part, like Fresh Pond Advisory Board, the Open Space Planning Committee for East Cambridge, Arts Council Advisory Board, Avon Hill, various neighborhood conservation districts, commissions, they're scattered all over the city. Probably the heavy lifting would occur with people who serve on things like the planning board, right? Because when you serve on the planning board, you're really out there in public, and nobody earns a dime from that.
And they put a lot of time into it.
Yeah, some people like Hugh Russell and several others have been on the planning board for a long time, and they're essential members of the board. I mean, without the kind of institutional memory that some of these long-term members provide, things could really grind to a standstill. There's an Affordable Housing Trust Board, Council on Aging, you name it. There's this really broad range of opportunities for citizens to be involved in municipal government. A lot of times people think it's all about the elected officials or the city manager, but it's not. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity here. And I've served on boards. I'm still on a recycling advisory committee, though I'll actually be leaving that shortly. I've been on there for over 2 decades. I figure I can give it to the kids now, I suppose. But I served on the technical working committee for the computerization of the elections, which is why I'm so ridiculous about elections. And even a water and sewer advisory committee board.
That's important.
It's a civic education. So this is my appeal. You kids, I want you to go out there. I want you to sign up for the team and put your name in to be on one of the city's boards and commissions. The appointing authority is the city manager for virtually really all of these. He is the appointing authority.
And vacancies are announced on the webpage.
And there are vacancies
city
announced.
webpage.
I try and promote them in my own little way as much as I can. But I really want to urge people to consider it. If you have it, especially if it's something that you already have some skills. Like there are certain people who are naturals for being on a conservation commission, let's say. They have a marine biologist or what have you. Or a planning board. They're architects and urban planning people, but it doesn't, you don't have to be. In my case, I've been on boards where I didn't have any expertise at all as I went in there.
They've talked about you.
Yeah, but it was an education for me. So I learned a lot about how the water system and the infrastructure of the city works.
You learn a lot.
You really do learn a lot, and it's like going to school, and it doesn't cost you a dime. It costs you some time.
Now, they're staffed by city workers, right?
Yeah, I mean, most of the city's boards and commissions, if not all of them,
They help you.
They're kind of tied in with various city departments. So there's usually a staff person from maybe the community development department or the water department or what have you. So you work in conjunction with city staff. So it gives you an opportunity to really get to know how the city functions, and you really do make a lot of friends. And I mean, there are short-term opportunities like the K2, C2 committees. They were studying Central Square and Kendall Square over the last 2 years. But I still serve on the Central Square Advisory Committee that continues, and reviews. We don't have any regulatory authority at all, but we review new projects that are proposed in Central Square and make a few recommendations to the planning board.
So you're going to this party?
I'm going to go to this party.
Okay, so here's the important thing. There's a party Monday from 1 to 5?
Well, it's noon to 5.
Noon to 5, so.
Mayor's office, but.
And what are they doing there for 5 hours?
Well, honestly,
Why?
we're going to I hopefully.
You're gonna mingle?
We're going to eat soup and sandwiches and stuff. That's what I'm told. Now, tune in, go to rwinters.com, www.rwinters.com.
And you'll have the menu?
And if there's any more information about
Oh.
this, I'm sure to provide it there. But so I'm just sort of telegraphing it to all you board and commission folks there.
So
is
if you want to be on a board and commission, should you go?
No, I don't think so. I think this is more in
It's not for you.
this one's recognition of people who have served. But
And what if you're not in now, but you've served before?
I don't think they turn you away. Not at all. But again, the main point I wanted to make is that
Yeah.
serving on a city board
Yes.
is a really, really great thing to do. I will say this, is that if
And you meet interesting people.
you meet interesting people, it's a tremendous education. If you go in there with a preset agenda that you want to sort of tear down the world and
Oh, no,
whack
then-
out the city,
then don't
I
do
don't
it.
necessarily think your chances of being appointed are all that great.
And you won't have fun doing it.
Right. So, but if you're a constructive person who wants to have a real honest discussion about things, really consider it, because we really need people to do that. As I say, it's not all about the
Yeah.
elected officials.
Yeah.
And if you don't get appointed to the Fresh Pond Advisory Board, you can't file for recount. These are just appointments. They're not elected positions.
Yeah, all kidding aside,
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%. These are really important.
Yeah, and some of these boards will have up to 20 members. Some of them have as few as 6 or 7 members, but they're all important in their own way. And really, it's the best civic education you could possibly hope for. So, consider it.
I'm with
So-
you. So we
well-
never got to talk about all these people we want to leave and fill with all these other seats.
Well,
We never finished that discussion. I guess we'll have
Well-
to do it if they actually do leave.
So, I guess we'll have to have another program, perhaps another week. And at that note, we have 5 seconds, Susanna.
Okay, well then we're leaving.